Teacher Martha's voice rang out coldly. The whole class fell silent. Sophia Carter, a 6-year-old girl with wavy curly hair, bowed her head, her small hands tightly gripping the edge of the table. She didn't understand what she had done wrong. Just because she accidentally dropped her box of crayons, she became the target of ridicule. No one spoke up to defend her. No one dared to object. This was not the first time Martha had shown favoritism, but this time she had publicly humiliated Sophia. But little did Martha know. A powerful figure was standing right outside the classroom. Vanessa Carter, the state attorney general, happened to be walking by, and at that moment she heard the insults directed at her daughter. Her eyes widened, her hands clenched involuntarily. A cold anger rose, but she kept her composure. In just a few seconds, she would walk into the classroom, and the teacher would face the most terrible consequences of his career. Sophia Carter is a 6-year-old girl with big, bright eyes, always filled with curiosity about the world around her. Her brown skin is as smooth as milk chocolate, standing out under her curly hair that her mother carefully combs every morning. Sophia's smile is radiant, carrying the innocence of a child, but also has something more determined and mature than her peers. Sophia is not only adorable, but also very intelligent. She loves fairy tales, but is also very interested in science and numbers. In class, she often raises her hand to speak, not afraid to ask questions when she doesn't understand something. Her lively and polite personality makes Sophia loved by many friends, but also unintentionally becomes a thorn in the eyes of some people with heavy prejudices, including her homeroom teacher, Martha Reynolds. Unlike many children her age, Sophia is very understanding. She knows that her mother is an important person, a busy person who never neglects her daughter. Vanessa Carter, Sophia's mother, is the state attorney general, one of the most powerful women of color in government. She is a role model of strength and determination, but also a gentle and responsible mother. Sophia is always proud of her mother, even though she doesn't fully understand what she does. Every night before bed, Vanessa reads to Sophia, encouraging her to think independently and never let anyone diminish her worth. But despite all the self-respect her mother has taught her, Sophia is still just 6 years old. She still has moments when she feels hurt, when she is treated unfairly, especially when it happens in a classroom that is supposed to be a safe and fair environment for all children. Westwood is an elite elementary school located in a wealthy, predominantly white neighborhood. The school has modern facilities, large playgrounds, and well-equipped classrooms. On the surface, Westwood prides itself on promoting diversity and inclusion, but that's not always the case. Despite the school's anti-discrimination policies, many parents and teachers still harbored implicit biases. Students of color like Sophia were often treated differently, though not always explicitly or directly. Some teachers tended to favor white students, praising and favoring them over white students. Parents of white students also looked askance when they saw children of color like Sophia playing with their own children. Despite all this, Sophia loved school. She loved art classes, running around the playground with her friends, and especially the days when she got to eat chocolate chip cookies for snack. But sometimes she felt like something was wrong. There were times when she raised her hand high but was not called on, even though Lily, who was sitting next to her, raised her hand at the same time. There were times when she handed in her homework carefully, but never received a compliment from the teacher, while other students who just wrote a few simple lines were praised. Sophia didn't know why it happened, but it felt unfair. And then, one Monday morning, the injustice really hit home when her teacher, Martha Reynolds, began to publicly insult her. Martha Reynolds is an elementary school teacher with over 20 years of teaching experience. On the surface, she is a strict teacher who demands discipline and hard work from her students. But with students of color, she has a completely different attitude. Martha grew up in a conservative household where racism was passed down from generation to generation. Despite living in a society that had changed a lot, deep down, she still held on to old ideas of white superiority. In her eyes, children like Sophia could never be as good or as deserving of equal treatment as other white students. When she was assigned to be Sophia's homeroom teacher, Martha immediately formed a prejudice against her. Whenever Sophia spoke up, she ignored her. Whenever she did her homework correctly, she did not praise her. Sometimes, she even looked at Sophia with cold eyes, as if her presence in the class was a nuisance. Miss Martha didn't like the idea of a black child like Sophia being so confident and intelligent. She felt that Sophia should know her place and not stand out from the white students. That's why she didn't hesitate to make her bias clear that morning, an act that she didn't know would soon have serious consequences. That morning, Sophia woke up early, eager to get ready for school. Before leaving home, her mother kissed her forehead and said, "Study well today, my little princess." Sophia smiled, hugged her mother tightly, and happily got on the bus to school. Little did she know that today would be a day she would never forget. When Sophia entered the classroom, she quickly sat down and opened her book. She loved her morning classes, when the gentle sunlight streamed through the window, when she could explore new things. But today, things didn't go as smoothly as she had hoped. From the moment she entered the classroom, Miss Martha made her bias clear. She greeted the white students with a smile, asking them about their weekend. But when she came to Sophia, her eyes were cold, and she didn't say a word. Sophia felt something was wrong, but she tried to keep her composure. As the class began, Miss Martha gave a simple assignment and asked the students to raise their hands. Sophia confidently raised her hand, but Miss Martha ignored her. She called on each student over and over again, while Sophia's small hand went unnoticed. This is just the beginning, and in the coming minutes the injustice will become clearer than ever. The morning class continued in a quiet atmosphere as the students concentrated on their homework. Miss Martha wrote some simple math problems on the board and asked the class to complete them within 15 minutes. The students quickly picked up their pens and focused on their work. Sophia was no exception. She bent over the paper, carefully reading the problem and using a pencil to solve each equation. The numbers were not difficult for her because mathematics had always been one of her favorite subjects. In just 5 minutes, Sophia had finished her homework and sat up straight, waiting for the teacher to check. Miss Martha went from desk to desk, checking the students' work. When she came to Lily's desk, a fair-skinned girl with long blonde hair, she smiled with satisfaction. "Good job, Lily. You're so smart," said Miss Martha, patting Lily on the shoulder. Next, she stopped in front of Mark's desk, a brown-haired boy with sparkling blue eyes. She looked at his paper. Although there were a few mistakes, she still praised him. "Keep it up, Mark. You have great potential." But when she got to Sophia's desk, Miss Martha just glanced at the paper without commenting. She didn't praise Sophia even though her work had no mistakes. Then Miss Martha walked on, completely ignoring her existence. Sophia looked down at her work, feeling uneasy. She didn't need praise to know she was doing the right thing, but the injustice made her wonder. Why was her teacher acting like this? The other students of color in the class were not getting the same attention. No matter how hard they tried, they were not treated as fairly as their white classmates. But the worst was yet to come. After the class finished their homework, Ms. Martha began asking questions to check students' understanding. "Can anyone explain problem number 3?" she asked, looking around the class. Sophia quickly raised her hand. She understood the lesson perfectly and was eager to share her thoughts. But Miss Martha pretended not to see. Instead, she called on Lily, who raised her hand only seconds after Sophia. "Lily, can you explain?" Lily stood up, answered hesitantly, and made a few mistakes. But instead of reminding her, Miss Martha still smiled and encouraged her. Sophia frowned, but did not give up. When the teacher asked the next question, she raised her hand even higher, trying to get her attention. But again, Miss Martha looked past her as if she did not exist. By the third question, Sophia couldn't hold it in any longer. She spoke softly. "Miss, can I answer this question?" The class fell silent. A few students turned to look at Sophia. She had done nothing wrong. She had simply wanted to speak like everyone else. But Miss Martha's reaction left everyone stunned. "Sophia, don't interrupt like that," she frowned, her voice full of annoyance. "If I wanted to call you, I would have already." Sophia felt a flush rise to her face. She bowed her head, her hands clutching the hem of her shirt. She had only wanted to participate in the lesson, but why was her teacher so angry with her? Sophia tried to ignore her teacher's words, but what happened next hurt her even more. While the class continued their lesson, Sophia accidentally dropped her box of crayons on the floor. The crayons rolled everywhere, making a small noise in the classroom. Sophia quickly bent down to pick them up, hoping not to disturb anyone. But Miss Martha immediately turned around, her face full of annoyance. "Why are you so clumsy, Sophia?" she said sarcastically. "Your house must be a mess, huh?" A few students chuckled. Sophia felt her ears burn. She wanted to protest, to say that her house was not a mess, that her mother had always taught her to be neat, but she didn't know what to say. "What an uneducated girl," Miss Martha continued, her voice full of sarcasm. Those words were like a knife stabbing straight into Sophia's little heart. She bit her lip, trying not to let her tears fall. She knew she wasn't a bad child. She knew her mother had raised her well. But those harsh words still made her feel pain. The little girl sat silently, her little hands clasped together under the table. She didn't want to cry in front of the whole class. Her mother had taught her to be strong, to be patient. But why was it so hard? Miss Martha continued to lecture as if nothing had happened, while Sophia felt as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she bit her lip hard, determined not to let them fall. "Don't cry, Sophia," the little girl said to herself. "Don't let her see you weak." But what Sophia didn't expect was that things didn't stop there. When a student in the class, a brown-haired boy named Jacob, saw Sophia's sad expression, he suddenly remembered something. "Sophia's mother is very important," Jacob spoke up. Sophia turned to Jacob, her eyes grateful. He wasn't defending her, just stating the truth. But instead of showing surprise or respect, Martha just smirked. "Oh, what does it matter?" she said disdainfully. "She probably does some lowly work." Those words stunned the entire class. Some students exchanged confused glances. Others bowed their heads silently. No one expected the teacher to say such words about Sophia's mother. Sophia clenched her fists, hurt. She couldn't believe that Martha would talk about her mother like that. She had suffered enough. And what she didn't know was that at that moment, someone very important was standing right outside the classroom door, witnessing it all. Because that morning, Vanessa Carter came to Sophia's school as a government official on a surprise inspection to assess whether the educational environment at Westwood was truly as equitable and inclusive as the school claimed. Little did she know that this inspection trip would lead her to a heartbreaking truth right in her daughter's classroom. Vanessa and the inspectors walked down the polished, tiled hallway, where the walls were covered with student drawings and posters proclaiming respect and unity. Slogans like "all students are equal" and "zero tolerance for discrimination" were everywhere. But what she was about to witness was the complete opposite of these statements. As she passed a classroom, Vanessa suddenly heard a voice coming from inside. A woman's voice, sharp and full of sarcasm. "Why are you so clumsy, Sophia? Your house must be a mess, right?" Vanessa's footsteps faltered. A chill ran down her spine. That was her daughter's name. She turned her head, her sharp eyes looking toward the classroom. Through the small glass window on the door, she could clearly see the scene inside. A middle-aged teacher with short curly hair, a narrow face, and eyes full of contempt standing in front of the board. In front of her was Sophia, her little daughter, her head bowed down on the table, her small shoulders shaking from suppressed emotions. Vanessa stood still, her breathing slowing. She had seen racism her whole life, in the workplace, in society, even in politics. But she never imagined that her daughter, just 6 years old, would face such injustice at a prestigious school like Westwood. And the most horrible thing is, her child's teacher, the one who is supposed to guide and protect children, is the one who is hurting her child. Vanessa kept her eyes out the window, listening to every word. Ever. Those words were like a knife through Vanessa's pride. For a moment, she wanted to immediately push the door open, confront the woman, and ask her what right she had to humiliate an innocent child like that. But Vanessa Carter was a smart and calm woman. Anger was boiling, but she knew how to control it. She closed her eyes for a brief second, taking a deep breath to calm herself. This was not a public argument. This was a battle of justice, and she would win not with anger, but with reason and authority. She opened her eyes, her gaze determined. Then she pushed the door open and walked in. The sound of the door opening startled the entire class. A hush fell as all the students turned to look at the woman who had just entered, a tall, strong woman with a stern face and sharp, powerful eyes. Sophia looked up, her eyes still red. When she saw her mother, her eyes widened, both surprised and slightly relieved. As for Miss Martha, her face showed a hint of confusion, but quickly regained its usual cold expression. Vanessa Carter stood up straight, her eyes scanning the classroom, then stopping on the teacher standing in front of the board. A heavy silence fell. No one dared to speak. Then, in a deep, strong, but authoritative voice, she said, "Excuse me, but I think I need to join this conversation." The whole class held its breath. Miss Martha stood frozen. The children's wide eyes looked at each other, then fixed on Miss Martha and the woman who had just entered. Some of the younger children did not understand what was happening, but the older children could clearly sense that this was not a normal conversation. Sophia remained seated, her eyes wide with shock and concern. She knew her mother was a strong person, but this was the first time she had seen her in a situation like this, right in the classroom, facing the teacher. The little girl silently gripped the corner of the table, her heart pounding. Martha, at first, did not recognize the woman standing before her. To her, she was simply a parent, perhaps an overprotective mother, or someone who had come to ask a trivial question. Her expression remained as smug as ever. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure, and took a step forward, folding her arms over her chest. "I'm sorry, but my classroom is not a place for parents to just walk into. If you have any problems, I suggest you make an appointment to meet privately at another time." Her voice still had a hint of arrogance, as if Mrs. Vanessa was just another annoying mother like any other. But there was one thing she didn't know. Mrs. Vanessa Carter was no ordinary mother. And today, she will realize that. Without changing her expression, Vanessa took another step closer to the teacher's desk. Her eyes were fixed on Miss Martha, her gaze cold but full of authority. In a voice as calm but sharp as a knife, she asked, "What did you just say to my daughter?" Miss Martha paused for a moment. For a moment, the confidence on her face wavered. But then, with her stubborn nature, she quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just teaching as usual." Vanessa was unfazed. She continued, her voice still cold but sharper. "What do you think about humiliating a child in front of his friends?" This time, Vanessa's words hit Ms. Martha like a hammer. Several students in the class began whispering to each other. Some glanced at Sophia, then back at the teacher with suspicious eyes. Miss Martha faltered for a few seconds. She could feel the scrutiny from the children, from the woman standing in front of her, and from the hallway outside, where a few teachers and students had begun to gather. She tried to cover it up, tried to keep her composure. "I don't think it's an insult. I'm just teaching them about order and discipline in the classroom." A weak excuse. Vanessa smiled, but her smile was not cheerful. It was a cold, sharp smile, like a lawyer about to expose a defendant's lies. She looked straight into Miss Martha's eyes and said, word by word, slowly, but with authority, "I'm Vanessa Carter, the State Attorney General. I'm here to check on education, and you've just shown me the injustice in this classroom." As soon as that sentence ended, a shockwave spread throughout the classroom. The students in the class stared in amazement. Some of them had heard their parents mention the name Vanessa Carter on TV or in the newspapers. This was no ordinary person. This was one of the most powerful people in the state. In the hallway outside, some teachers began to lean closer to the door, listening to the conversation. Some students from other classes also gathered, whispering and gossiping. Miss Martha suddenly felt as if the room had shrunk, as if the lights in the classroom had become brighter. Her breathing became more rapid, her heart pounding in her chest. Now, she was no longer standing before an ordinary parent. She was standing before a woman with real power, one who could ruin her career with a single decision. She wanted to argue, wanted to find a way out of this situation, but the feeling of anxiety was rising, choking her throat. She made a terrible mistake, and now she is facing the consequences. Immediately after Attorney General Vanessa Carter's powerful statements, Westwood Elementary School Principal Richard Coleman rushed to the classroom door. He was a man in his 50s, with neatly combed gray hair and a neat suit that suggested professionalism. But now his face was filled with worry and tension. He had heard what was going on through the chatter of teachers and students outside. "What's the matter?" He entered, his eyes darting from Vanessa Carter to Martha, who stood with a stiff face and clenched fists. Vanessa slowly turned to the principal, her voice no longer a personal question, but carrying the authority of a prosecutor standing in court. "I think we need to have an emergency meeting immediately." Under the gaze of the teachers and students watching, the principal could not refuse. He nodded, cleared his throat, and said, "Please invite Ms. Vanessa and Ms. Martha to my office immediately." The classroom remained silent as the three of them left the room. Sophia watched her mother filled with emotions, worry, but also a glimmer of hope that this time she would be protected. In the principal's office, an emergency meeting quickly began. In addition to Vanessa Carter, Ms. Martha, and Principal Richard Coleman, several senior teachers were also present to testify to the incident. Miss Martha, now realizing the danger of the situation, tried to regain her composure. She sat up straight, cleared her throat, and began to defend herself. "I think there is a misunderstanding here. I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just trying to maintain discipline in the classroom." Vanessa raised her eyebrows, her voice calm but cold. "You maintain discipline by humiliating a child in front of his friends? By mocking his family without even knowing who his mother is?" Miss Martha was slightly confused, but still stubborn. "I just wanted to teach you about responsibility and being careful. If I did something that caused Sophia or Mrs. Vanessa to misunderstand, I sincerely apologize, but I don't think I deserve such a serious reprimand." Principal Coleman looked at Vanessa Carter. He knew full well that this superficial apology would not diffuse the situation. A teacher in the room spoke up, his voice serious. "Actually, this is not the first time Ms. Martha has been complained about for favoritism toward students." Another teacher nodded in agreement. "I have received complaints from several parents before, but there was no concrete evidence to handle. Today we witnessed the incident with our own eyes." Miss Martha began to panic. "Just because of a warning I get treated like this? I have devoted many years to this school." But no one spoke up for her. Vanessa folded her arms, her voice resolute. "A teacher can influence a child's future. If a prejudiced person like her continues to teach, how many children will suffer discrimination?" Under pressure from Vanessa Carter and other teachers, Principal Richard Coleman sighed and finally announced, "After reviewing the situation and previous feedback, I have decided to terminate Ms. Martha Reynolds immediately." News of this decision quickly spread throughout the school. That afternoon, before leaving, Vanessa Carter stood before the entire faculty in an emergency meeting and spoke in a low but powerful voice. A teacher can influence a child's future. Today, I saw a bad example that our education system cannot tolerate. We all have a responsibility to ensure that every student, regardless of skin color, background, or family situation, is treated fairly and with respect. The whole meeting room was silent. Many teachers bowed their heads thinking about her words. After the meeting, Vanessa goes to find Sophia, who is sitting in the schoolyard, still confused about what happened. The mother gently knelt down before her daughter, her eyes full of love. "Are you okay, Sophia?" Sophia blinked, then slowly nodded. "What did you do, Mom?" Vanessa smiled, wrapped her arms around her daughter, and patted her on the back. "I was just doing what every adult should do, protecting you." Sophia leaned against her mother, a feeling of warmth and security filling her heart. "Do I deserve respect, Mom?" Vanessa lifted her daughter's chin, looked straight into her eyes, and said firmly, "You always deserve respect, Sophia. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." After this incident, Westwood Elementary School made many changes to ensure there was no more discrimination in the classroom. Teachers are required to attend equity training in education. A new ombudsman unit has been established to monitor teaching practices and receive feedback from parents, ensuring that no student is subjected to the same unfairness that Sophia experienced. Sophia, even though she is only 6 years old, has learned an important lesson. Justice is not just something people say, but something that must be done. And her mother, Vanessa Carter, proved it with her actions. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.